Welcome to Chant It Down Radio. ChantItDownRadio.com is the website. This is episode 161, the Georgia Guidestones, Mass Genocide, and Pufas. Today we're going to explore the Georgia Guidestones, which are commonly referred to as humanity's tombstone. We're going to look into who created them, the group behind it, because 90% of the earth must go, and the CDC says 90% of the earth must be vaccinated.
Chant It Down Radio's coming to you live from the Hawaiian Islands, coming from the perspective of complete freedom, coming from wisdom outside the system and then some. This is the mouthpiece of the natural earth forgotten. At this point in time, humanity's been kept from the truth, so Chant It Down Radio offers the coordinates to a path out.
You're searching for something whole, cause what you see is real life. You're watching this world unfold, the truth beneath the lies, rekindling what's been stole, the need to free one's mind, uncover the truth exposed, so people see the light. Let's chant it down so we can know. It's simple, we just break it down a little bit so we can process all. Make the switch and elevate yourself to conscious mode, and it's beneficial we can get this concept rolling. Get the future generations wanna stop the whole thing. With the message demonstrated, we can start a post, taking in, assimilating, getting lots of numbers, waking up the population, try to stop hypnosis.
Well, let's get right into the subject matter of today's show, and that is, first of all, we're going to start off with the Georgia Guidestones. I never really paid a whole lot of attention to the Georgia Guidestones through my career in the study of corruption. I knew they were there, and I knew what they said. I've always been one to read the writings and quotes of these psychopaths rather than read the actual Guidestones, because I've always felt like, well, that tells us more. But let's look into this story. It's interesting, and it pertains to now, and that's why I'm going over this. So, a guy that went under the name of R.C. Christian approached a granite company in Elberton, Georgia, in 1979 to have them built. And this is like a ways out of Atlanta somewhere. I forget how many miles, but this guy was apparently loaded. He was a rich man, said he was a Christian, and I think that is like, coinage of the realm in that area. As far as if you told someone you're a Christian, they're like, oh yeah, all right, they're that's the Bible Belt. And anyway, he said he represented a group that wants to put up a monument, and this is not his real name. Nobody's been able to figure out who this guy was since he wanted to remain anonymous. And even on a plaque or marker stone that's like right next to these stones, it says to the side, it says the author's name, R.C. Christian, is a pseudonym. Okay, so some people speculate the R.C. might stand for Christian Rosenkreuz, which might be part of the Rosicrucians. R.C. could also stand for the rose in the cross of the Rosicrucian symbol, some people say. And from above, from a bird's eye view of the stones, it resembles a rose and a cross, sorta. And let me come back to that, because that has another side to it. These stones are on the 33rd parallel, and 33, as we all know, is an important number in all the secret societies. Okay, and the stones are shaped like the UN headquarters, some people say, and they happen to be 666 miles from them. No joke. So the stones, Mr. Christian explained, would be a calendar, a clock, and a compass, and should be strong enough to withstand storms, catastrophic events, and any other calamity. He explained his group had been working on a model for 20 years, and he wanted to do it, in this area, obviously because of the parallel of the 33rd. And so this thing, it marks the solstices and the equinox and noontime every day through this little hole, and it's kind of like a wannabe megalithic stone site. It's like similar to Mayan monuments, Machu Picchu, in the idea of tracking the solar events. So on March 22nd, 1980, the structure was unveiled in the presence of a few hundred guests, people that got specially invited. And after the ceremony, all documents pertaining to the construction and the origin of this monolith were destroyed. Later, under total secrecy, the ownership was transferred to Elbert County, and so everything was destroyed to trace this back to this group, especially this guy, R.C. Christian. And I find that pretty suspicious. We can't really go back and see who actually is responsible for it. Some speculate that, well, Ted Turner, living in Atlanta, that it's Ted Turner because he's one to say that he believes that 95% of the Earth should go. Or who knows, he maybe was friends with the creator or part of this mysterious group, and he's definitely a big supporter of the United Nations. In fact, he says, I reject the use of force, in particular military force, and back United Nations arbitration of international disputes. He says, I support the total elimination of all nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons of mass destruction. And he also says, I support the United Nations in its efforts to collectively improve the conditions of this planet. In other words, kill off 90% of the population because he's a eugenicist and he agrees with these people. They're all friends. All right, so could have been Ted Turner, but I kind of don't think so, as we'll go over here. There's an intermediary banker who is responsible for the constructions of the Guidestones. His name is Wyatt Martin. It said he put he would take the secrecy of R.C. Christian's identity to the grave, and who put the stones there. And so this guy won't budge, and well, to this day, he won't budge. Okay, so I think people get stuck too long on trying to find out who is responsible for these rather than looking at the information on it. However, this talk will tie back into that a little bit later, toward the end of this talk. Now, I recommend the documentary Dark Clouds Over Elberton, and even possibly before finishing this episode, so I don't steal the thunder from it too much. But why the secrecy? Why the secrecy of who is responsible for this doomsday calendar clock wannabe megalithic site? And I mean, here, another doomsday scenario that's not secretive is the seed vault in Svalbard, Norway. There is no secret there. And the reason why is to keep the seeds in case of Earth catastrophe. Guess what? None of us commoners will be getting those, I guarantee that. But at least, you can know about that, and you can find out who's responsible for it. It's not as big of a mystery. Yeah, the Guidestones are a modern-day megalith, although doable by crane. That's why I call them a wannabe, because it was definitely done by humans, and it wasn't a real superhuman site. But, so, these things, it's pretty simple. It has a center slab and 4 bigger slabs that are 19 feet, 3 inches tall, arranged around it, and then a capstone on top. Next to it on the ground is a marker stone that I mentioned that reads the author's name, and underneath is supposedly a time capsule. The opening date has been left blank, and it says on there, sponsors, small group of Americans who seek the age of reason. Well, we could use the age of real reason, but we'll come back to that. It may have something to do with the Atlanta Rosicrucian Society. I mean, some people consider, according to a mysterious document, that there are some keys that will be released when the prophecy is fulfilled. It's possible. I'm not putting it past it. But the time capsule is a mystery, and many of the people who were involved in the creation, the construction, and financing say there is nothing there, but they don't really know. So the stones are written in the most common language in the languages of the world: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, Mandarin, Chinese, and Russian. And then the flat granite capstone reads, "Let these be the guidestones to an age of reason." There it is again, the age of reason. Etched around the edges is the translation in additional ancient languages: Babylonian, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. Interesting. Basically, it's speaking to the new and old civilizations of Earth. So, what are these 10 commandments from hell? Well, we got number 1, the big one, and this is what this talk mainly is about, of course: maintain humanity under 500 million in a perpetual balance with nature. And that's the main reason of this talk, and that's why I have this show today. But let's read the others. Number 2, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. And what does that mean? Guide reproduction wisely. That to me sounds like population control and mass sterility. I think that's what they want. And unite humanity. Number 3, unite humanity with a living new language. And this one, I don't know. could be AI, or is it like putting a language together like that in the Bible before the Tower of Babylon collapsed, like a universal language of some sort? Yeah, I don't know. Number four, rule, passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. And, a lot of these, as you read along, they don't sound that ominous. They sound pretty nice. That sounds okay. But with the word rule in there, it doesn't sound great. And what is considered tempered reason? And who is saying tempered reason, right? These guys. Okay, number five, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Sounds pretty good and better than what we have right now, right? Sounds okay. Um, if there were fair and just courts, but not from these people. Number six, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Yeah, well, what's the world court? Sounds like one world government. I think we can figure that one out. And number seven, avoid petty laws and useless officials. Well, we could use that right about now in 2021, okay? Definitely could use that. Although I don't think, again, coming from these people, that's what they're talking about, Who knows? Okay, number eight, balance personal rights with social duties. What could social duties be? Could they be like serving a one world government, um, basically like community service, so this thing is maintained? I don't know. Number 10 or number 9, balance or prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Hey, sounds good on the surface. Humans need to prize truth now, so we don't get run by a tyrannical oligarchy. But I just don't see that happening from the same people that say to maintain humanity under 500 million. And then the last one, number 10, be not a cancer on earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. So, sure, it sounds good. Leave room for nature. I'm in nature right now, and I'm glad this is here, because if it wasn't, I'd be, you know, less centered as a being, right? But, okay, when you read basically about 3 through 10, they're not terribly ominous. Some of it sounds even good on the surface. And I think that is purposely vague to not sound too horrible, right? And some say this is humanity's tombstone. It's the marker for these times and the elite's plan. And I would say that is true. Other people say that it's a warning to track a solar catastrophe and it's there to withstand a natural disaster, and that these guidestones will give humanity a guide to go by. I disagree with that, especially when you read that the first commandment is to maintain humanity under 500 million. Who's going to be responsible for maintaining that? You know? No. And interesting enough, that the UN agrees with this number as an appropriate number of people on Earth, as well as Bill Gates, as well as Ted Turner, David Rockefeller. So these are people who believe that humans are basically the shit on the earth, and they want to maintain a more manageable population, so their control is complete. Prince Philip: if I were reincarnated, I would wish to be returned to Earth as a killer virus to lower human population levels. That's what these people are. It's what they're all about: genocide. So 6 years after the erection of the stones, a book came out by Robert Christian, R.C. Christian, same guy, titled Common Sense Renewed. And yes, common sense does need to be renewed, not by the same forces that are making sure we are dumbed down enough to be led like sheep to the slaughterhouse, but real common sense. Um, This book was given to every member of Congress, several thousand political officials, and shapers of public opinion. Who are the shapers of public opinion? Those who craft what the media says, the media's real mouthpiece, that they speak from. and therefore crafts the mass opinions of people. So look how since the early 90s, every developed nation claims we are overpopulated, and of course, that's coming from the United Nations. And look how they always tell us it's our fault. It's your fault. We're driving cars and polluting the earth and creating global warming. It's your fault, you dirty humans. And they give us no choice but to participate and drive the very cars that were designed for us to go here and there. You know? I mean, there isn't, what, do you want to take the bus all the time? Probably not. Just like you not having a cell phone. There's basically nothing you can do without one anymore. They've basically boxed humanity into a corner where you have to have one, whether you want one or not. And most people have them, and I wish I didn't have one. But it's getting to a point where it's just really bad. And about climate change, listen to my episode 132, Climate Change Under Blanketed Skies. If you want to really, if you really need more on that front, I think that's where that goes. But in this book that R.C. Christian wrote, he says we have controlled disease but not regulated its numbers. And I find that interesting, out of context and related to today's scamdemic. But that's just that. He says, reproduction could not be left up to the individual. It should require government oversight. He mentioned China's one-child policy as a way. And they want you to eventually be infertile, so you have to have test tube babies. And that goes back to the second commandment on there, guide reproduction wisely, So that's what they're trying to say. And he mentioned in his book a rational new order. Christian believes that healthier and more productive human beings can produce, and superior human intelligence, compassion, and drive, and other desirable mental and physical qualities. And he also says, if the economy is bad and you lose your job, in his rational new world order, you will have to become a slave of the state to survive. Well, you pretty much are that anyway, but yeah. And everyone is required to carry with them a unique biometric ID card. Without one, you will not be able to get to work or get government help. So that's the man who brought you the Georgia Guidestones. And it seems to line up with what the elites want to bring out of our current situation. It seems to line up with all that. So why I bring all this up right now and why it's so important is, obviously, we are on the precipice of huge changes. People are filling their bodies with unknown substances with unknown consequences. Due to mass censorship, if you want to listen to this entire podcast, go to any podcast player out there and visit the website chantitdownradio.com, which has many episodes and archives to sift through.